Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Battlefield podcast. Today's guest is none other than the BF4 hover tank aficionado, map critique aficionado, Gravity himself. Hello, Gravity. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Anders. How are you?
I'm gonna give you a little brief introduction, maybe a little more than I did there, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. So, for those of you who don't know me or my streams or my YouTube channel, my name is Gravity. I've been playing Battlefield since BF1942, so I go way back. I played competitive Battlefield from 1942 to BF4. So, 1942, Vietnam 2, 3, 2142, 4, BC2. I'm an old man. And then I started casting competitive Battlefield 2 in like 2020, 2021. So I've done competitive Battlefield casting for 8v8s and 5v5s for about 5 years now as well, on and off. And then I've got a YouTube channel where I discuss maps.
Really good
Mostly.
videos, by the way. Probably the only place you can find Battlefield map breakdowns that are actually worth watching on YouTube. So if you want to go check those out, the Gravity's links and everything will be in the description of this when it goes up on YouTube, which maybe tomorrow. So the reason why we're on this podcast with Mr. Gravity today, we're going to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to talk about why Battlefield 2042's maps sucked, what they can do in BF6 rather, to remedy this situation in multiple ways. We'll probably touch on things, like 128 players and verticality and all that sort of stuff. Our favorite Battlefield maps of all time. And we'll probably touch on some like Battlefield competitive viability here, because he did mention he casts a bunch of stuff. And, we're both competitive Battlefield players. I've won tournaments. I've competed. I've actually casted some tournaments as well. So we're both experienced in that regard. We'll start it off with, and I just played. I just fucking rage quit this piece of shit map. Why did Battlefield 2042's maps suck, Gravity? If you want to take it away with the first point here.
Oh boy. There's a long list of things, but I think you can chalk it up to three big ones. And the first is probably poor planning on their part. They just did not, when they make a map, the 128, first off, 128 comes into play big time here.
I feel like we have
think
to
you'll
discuss 128 almost first, because it's
Yeah.
core to it.
So the interesting thing is with 128, they decided that they were going to try to make a bunch of really big maps. But in terms of like big map scale, they actually were not bigger in context to like some older Battlefield maps. Like Kaleidoscope, they claimed was enormous, and it's actually smaller than like Bandar Desert and Golmud, and like the actual playable area is actually pretty small. Hourglass is pretty large, but the problem is you can't just increase a map scale and say, let's just chuck 128 players onto it and see it and play it in the classic Battlefield style.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have one interesting location and the other 4 or 5 or 7 are terrible, then everyone's going to gravitate towards one particular spot, and then you've just got a meat grinder cluster, cluster frack over there, and you just ignore the rest of the map. Which is why I think you find that if you play the 64-player conquest maps or the scales, they work so much better. Now, of course, the specialists also break a lot of the map design in 2042, and that's another big problem.
Oh, yeah.
You can have a map like Manifest where it's like, oh, we'll have this cool dock map, but also we've got a specialist in there with a grappling hook that completely breaks all level design philosophy that you want. Right.
Which is why I play him.
Oh, I mean, that in the increased ADS movement speed is huge.
100%. McKay is so powerful because he breaks the rules of the game while also being the best 1v1 gunfighter in the entire game. Yes. So that combination is absolutely lethal.
And you can make an argument for like Sundance as well. The same thing of like being able to get across the map and have that advantage. So the specialists do break a lot of the map design, which is also why if you play Portal, like on the BF3 maps, or just the non-specialist, soldiers, the map design actually works a little better, just inherently, which is nice. So yeah, I think poor planning when you take into consideration a lot of the specialists that is part of it. Maybe a lack of imagination is a lot of affects the map design as well. They kind of just took these cool concepts of a location and they were like, well, how do we make a map out of that? I don't know, just make it a make one cool location and the rest are just tall skyscrapers or tall buildings or containers, right? There was not a lot of assets, not a lot of map detail. They have tiny little objectives that don't have anything around it, and that has its own catastrophic consequences for spawn points.
Oh my
Like
God.
Battlefield 2042 spawn points are
Are
notoriously bad.
unbelievably bad.
Yeah. So it's like if you don't have enough detail and cover and terrain deviation, then you've got massive problems for spawn camping. And I think a lot of this also boils down to maybe a time factor. I think 2042 they just didn't have enough time to cook the maps fast enough. Um, Interestingly, I will say that if you look towards like the post-launch maps, especially like Spearhead, Redacted, maybe even Haven a little bit, they did seem to improve their map quality a little bit going forward, especially post-launch.
I think Haven's
But
one of the worst maps in the game.
Haven is like dead middle of the road. I don't think it's anything spectacular, but I think if you compare it to like some of the launch maps, it's still not that bad. But
I don't.
Spearhead, I mean, you
Oh
got
man,
Spearhead, yeah, Spearhead and
Haven for
Redacted.
me is one of the. My
Oh,
chat
it's
knows this. Whenever I play Haven,
oh no,
I'm
I hate
totally
I have a
dreading
bad
it.
time
I
on
know
it too.
exactly.
Yeah, I did not rate it highly either.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there 100%. In particular when it comes to 128 players, in my opinion, I don't know if DICE could get it right if they were given, 6 years to make it a 128 player Battlefield game. I just don't think it works as well as 64 players. I think it kind of overcomplicates things. It's new territory, and we don't have another game to fail or to waste with trying to make 128 players work. I think they absolutely made the correct decision with going away from 128 players in Battlefield 6. And you mentioned the spawn points, and how it really just emphasizes spawn camping. I spawn camped someone like 10 minutes ago. Like, a helicopter was flying above my base. I spawned an AA gun. He was right above me, and I insta-killed him. And then Baranox and I were playing Conquest Ascension. We spawn the helicopter. We hover over their spawn, and we know the flag spawns. There's nothing they can really do. And you can do that with infantry as well. And the problem with that is a lot of the time the flag spawns are just so out in the middle of nowhere that it's like,
Yeah.
what are these spawns? Because not only are you out in the middle of nowhere, you are 60, 70, 80 meters away from sometimes decent cover. And the people on the flag, if they know the spawns, are in cover and they can see you spawn. So it's just
It's kind of like playing a refractor engine Battlefield game sometimes, where there's just nothing in between these vast distances.
yeah.
I think the other one I said Haven. Reclaimed is the other one I was going to give a better example of, like a better post-launch map. But it's just like, even still, you get some of those spawn points are just absolutely awful, and I think there's a lot that was not taken account into for that game. I don't think 128 on the 128 player issue, interestingly, I don't think that it is impossible to design a good Battlefield map for it. It's not that I don't think they could do it. I don't think the technology is there, and I don't think they're.
They don't have the tech, Gravity.
Well, think of it like, I mean, the server tick rate thing in itself is just a giant hurdle. You can't just say, okay, well, we'll have 128 players and not have anything more 60 hertz or more. Like 2042, it's 45 standard, but you get 60 players in a little room together, and suddenly the tick rate drops down to 20, right? It's like you're playing BF3 again.
Which is where the hit registration problems come into play whenever you're playing, especially maps like Redacted. Sometimes you can really tell, especially if you're on maybe a higher ping server. I can tell the difference immediately, even if I'm on West Coast versus East Coast. Even that little increase of like 40 ping is like, oh my God, it's like, am I playing in China? What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, you can't tell. But my favorite part about it is, like, then they'll give you like modes like 128 player breakthrough or Rush XL, and you'll see people go, "Oh, I love that mode."
Oh my
But I
God.
can't. Why can't I hit anything? And like, guys, you just it's because you have 100 people crammed around a tiny sector.
You
like,
just
that's
cut the
why you
tick
can't.
rate in half.
Yeah. So I mean, those are things that, moving away from 128, they're at least not burdened by those features.
Yeah. One thing I want to touch on with 2042's map design in particular is I feel like even if McKay or any of these verticality breaking characters weren't in the game, I feel like there were still potentially too many areas of verticality that you could get up to. I feel like great Battlefield maps, they have very limited predictable areas of verticality, and that includes the number of floors that are accessible on buildings. Most notably, if you look at, let's say, for instance, the outside portion of Operation Metro, the A flag, where you have those apartment complexes, you can access 3 floors, right? 3 floors, but there are a limited amount of windows, and the walls are destructible. So it's a predictable area that you can actually handle. In 2042, especially Haven, especially crowded urban maps like their, what's the BC2 map remake? I'm blanking on it. The grayed out buildings all made of concrete.
Arica Harbor?
Arica Harbor, yeah. Haven, Arica Harbor. Those dense urban areas, just so many areas of verticality, so many windows, so many unpredictable angles. On top of the specialists ruining the map flow, it just becomes a bunch of slop, for lack of a better word, and becomes extremely unpredictable, even for the most aware players in the game.
This is what I mean by planning. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at Haven, and it's essentially cookie cutter buildings. There's nothing unique, nothing.
It's copy paste Arica Harbor BC2 buildings.
Right, and it's not like there was even a major incentive or effort to like break the sight lines between the buildings or anything, or put something unique between their street signs, anything. Because now you're right, like you said, you're just in a fishbowl constantly of other buildings. So you were just it's a mess of an experience.
Yeah. So what can they do in BF6 to actually remedy these problems, which we've just covered? I would say, I'm not sure if you want to actually talk about what we've seen leak wise, but I think from what I've seen personally, they're just not going too over the top with some of what I've seen so far. Like, just seems like they're planning better. Like you said, they're not just copy pasting buildings. They are not just having wide open flat areas. It seems like there's undulations and rocks and places where you can rotate towards and around, and this area is covered from there. And I'm just excited to see what they do with the rest of the maps, because it would be honestly, it would be an amazing comeback if after 2042 they give us some of the best maps we've had since probably Battlefield 1. That would impress me.
So, with regard to the next game and at least some of the leaked footage, I haven't seen all. It's like crazy. You just see it all the
So
time on
many.
Reddit. I try to avoid quite a bit of it. It does look like they are switching gears and like maybe just heavily correcting from 2042. You see a lot more density, a lot more cover, a lot more map detail, which I'm all just thrilled to see, because I mean,
The
that's been a
size
problem
of the map seems to be more dialed in too. A lot of the time for me, when I'm just, even when there's like overhead map views, I'm like, there isn't some random 700-meter stretch of nothingness like you would see in El Alamein or something.
It looks like it looks like there's a scale, like they're really trying to get that map scale correct, so you're not walking 500 meters from flag to flag. They're trying to get people in the action maybe faster.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all good news. With regard to better map detail, hopefully there's better spawn logic. Hopefully there's better players or objects around flags, so you're not getting beamed once you spawn. I would hope that these maps would be designed with multiple modes in mind from the start, so that you don't have a situation where certain modes feel shoehorned. And that has been a problem for a lot of past Battlefield games.
Oh yeah, especially
Breakthrough and
so
Rush.
noticeable in Battlefield 2042, because a lot of the maps, if you look at them from an overhead view, they are specifically designed almost not even for conquest. You can tell a lot of them are designed more for the linear modes because of just how long they are. Spearhead is a perfect example. Spearhead is one of the better Battlefield 2042 maps. That map is so linear if you look at the overhead view of it.
Yeah, and that's another one of those examples of like post-launch map design of they wanted to avoid those bigger open maps, and they wanted to kind of make it more like a classic map and give people that linear style. And don't get me wrong, it's better. It's not a Spearhead's not a meat grinder by any means. But you definitely feel that whole breakthrough rush lineality to it.
Yeah, for sure.
So what else? The other thing I would say is I would I would hope that they're addressing long-term like legacy map issues, um, like poor map boundaries,
Oh my God.
too flat of terrain, being able to shoot in and out of deployments. Like those are biggies. Like, design your deployments a little bit better so that you don't have one way in and out.
There's
That's
more of a natural barrier maybe between being able to spawn peek into deployment and not being able to. Because with 2042, I mean, and in Battlefield in general, I mean, the players in the chat will know this. Peeking the spawn for the farm is tradition. All right, it's tradition, but they can make it harder because a lot of the time in 2042,
they could give a lot of more pathways out. That's my
yeah,
biggest concern. Like, there's nothing fun about being spawn trapped, but you should at least allow people to get out of it as easy as you can.
of course. What are your thoughts on bringing back some legacy maps? Because this has been a topic I've seen some people bring up on a bunch of different social media platforms. Call of Duty is obviously infamous at this point for having 19 versions of Shipment, 19 versions of Nuketown, but Battlefield, up until 2042, didn't really take that bring classic maps back approach nearly as hard as COD did. And I would be interested to see them bring back a limited amount of maybe some fan favorite maps like Grand Bazaar, for instance, just as an example. But I'm kind of hardline on the opinion that they can't just start bringing back a ton of old maps. They have to keep it very limited. I still want like 90% of the maps in BF6 or in any Battlefield game to be new, brand new, like we just made this. I don't want it to turn into COD in that regard, where it just seems so blatantly lazy.
The good news with that is I don't think any Battlefield game. I mean, there's every Battlefield game is almost everyone has had legacy maps or remastered maps to them. But they never make up a majority of the map design. They know usually it's like an expansion pack or something that has 3 or 4 to it. And even BF1 and 5 had fewer than that. If memory serves, I don't think BF1 had any. Unless somebody can correct me off the top of my head.
I can't remember any legacy map that was in Battlefield 1.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that
the
was
chat wants to correct
all
us.
original. I'm just looking here real quick. Yep, that was all original.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's good. I completely agree with you here. My thought process towards remastering old maps is one, they should I'm all for it, but they should avoid remastering vanilla maps and launch maps because those have been played the most and been done to death. And they should avoid remastering maps that have already been remastered.
Okay.
Because why would you want to, if you've played BF3 and BF4 for like 12 years, 15 years,
like, yeah.
why would you want to play Caspian Border again?
Oh
right?
my God.
It's, or Gulf of Oman again, or Wake Island again, right? Like, I understand that there was a nostalgia pull to certain maps, but there are also very popular maps, especially post-launch maps, that are well deserved to get remasters and get a kind of a new audience, a fresh audience. Because also, people buy a Battlefield game and then content doesn't release for 6 months, so you get a player drop off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that post-launch content doesn't get seen by a good chunk of the audience. So if you can have a really awesome map post-launch and half your audience isn't going to see it. So those are the ones I think you should target to remaster down the road.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. One of my mods said, if it don't have Wake Island in BF6, I don't want it. I will comment on a couple maps that I never want to see again. You said a couple of them already. I never want to see Wake Island again. I never want to see Caspian Border again. I'm sorry. These are maps that obviously been brought back so many times. People play them. People love them, blah, blah, blah. I have always thought in every iteration of Wake Island that I've ever played, same with Caspian Border, it's just, I don't know, they're just not that great, in my opinion. And maybe, I've played vehicles on them, I still have the same opinion. Caspian Border needs to stop being made.
There's a reason for that with Wake Island, though. Did you ever play 1942?
No.
Okay,
that was before my time.
To be fair, that is the best and really the only great iteration of Wake Island. And the reason for that is the ships were movable. So you had the movable carrier and a movable destroyer.
Mm.
So the map became dynamic. It wasn't static. It was not. You always knew where the attackers were going to come from. They can come from every direction. You can move the carrier outside the airfield and shoot the
See,
flash
that
to
changes the
planes.
entire dynamic of the entire map.
Right. Right. And they've never done that again. And it's just a missed opportunity every time. So
What?
that's, yeah.
What?
So
Why
when
would they not do that?
So when they announced that they were going to remake the map in BF5, I was like, okay, this is actually going to happen this time, right? And it didn't, and I was pissed. Yeah.
So
Like, if
DICE
there's
is just
one
incompetent once
location-
again.
I wouldn't call it incompetence. I would say that perhaps, again, timescales, cost, a lack of water dynamics kind of maybe key features into that. BF5 is always a weird one because, you know, there's always a lack of water combat in BF5, but whereas they just did in BF1. I don't understand how the technology works there, but apparently that was a limitation. That had to have been.
Yeah, I don't know. BF5 is a strange game in general because it's the only Battlefield game that was ever canceled mid-service. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about BF5 if you want to come on the podcast another time, and because I would love to. I haven't talked about that game in a while in detail. BF5 for me represents like one of the biggest misses ever because we're not going to have an opportunity to have another World War II Battlefield game for who knows how long. 20 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's not going to happen anytime soon. It maybe never again. So
I would be happy to come on and talk just about BF5 because I'm right there in the same boat as you.
Yeah, it's such a missed opportunity.
Right, it's like as somebody who's played the original 1942, the moment they announced it was going to be a World War II game, I was like, okay, this is it. You have the perfect era for a Battlefield game. You have just an insane amount of guns and locations and vehicles and naval combat and factions. Like, this is the gold mine.
Unlimited.
And it was just a completely, misfire on terms of the launch quality and the post-launch content. And
the direction they took was absolutely head-scratching.
It was, and we could spend hours talking about that game.
Of course.
Just some of the map design and the vehicle design in particular is just confounding.
Well, I guess we'll segue into what are your favorite Battlefield maps of all time?
Oh, I have a lot. I've been around a while. Telemarket from BF3 is my favorite infantry map of all time. Oof. I love Telemarket.
That's a good one.
I think that blows so many other infantry maps out of the water. Operation Flaming Dart from Battlefield Vietnam. You just had to be there.
I wasn't there, I'm gonna have to watch a video.
Incredible aircraft map. Quang Tri from Vietnam, Museum from Hardline, Train Dodge from Hardline. Just one of the best sandbox maps I've ever played. Like, it's just every map is just insanity.
God, Hardline. Just not to go on a tangent, but I guess I am. Hardline. I was making the Battlefield Top Plays video for Sunday last night, and I've been getting Hardline clips sent in. What the fuck is wrong with the Battlefield community for hating on that game as much as they did? That game, I would play the shit out of that game right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It looks so amazing.
Yeah, that game has some of the best sandbox play and just crazy out there, incredible plays, movement, vehicles, gunplay, out of any other game in the series. It's just absolutely solid. That's just a mystery for why that didn't take off. I mean, it had its reasons. Poor launch window, the setting of the game, whatever. But as far as core gameplay, just perfection. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned dive a little deeper into Telemarket, because that is also one of my favorite Battlefield infantry maps of all time. That map just had such an awesome flow.
Yes.
Just an amazing infantry flow.
So Telemarket is not anything special. It is a 5-flag diamond-shaped map. So you have one flag in the center and 4 around it.
Much like Devastation from BF5 for people that don't maybe understand what he's talking about layout-wise.
Yes. In fact, very much similar to that. The only weakness that the map has is that at the time they launched it as Conquest Assault, which is a mistake in
Mm.
my mind. I think it should have been full conquest because one team gets capped out and then it's over and then you go to
Mhm.
the next map. But I if I ever saw that map again, that would be the only change I'd make. Part of the reason it succeeds is because it's low to the ground. There are no um not even I don't even think there's a two-story building. It's everything is either one floor or there's no skyscrapers. It's very down to the ground, which is so you have streets, alleyways, pathing options are excellent. Every flag is very unique and distinct, and the flow on the map is just so fast paced. It's great,
It's
and
a
the
great
lighting.
combination of
Yeah.
complexity, but also predictability. And
Yes.
that all the best maps I've played have that.
It almost feels like some. I hate to draw a Call of Duty comparison, but it feels like when you're in the moment, when in that zen moment as an infantry player, like when you know what you're doing, you can crush that map. You know
Oh
where
my
people are
god, yeah.
coming from. You know how to play it. Yeah, you know the angles to hold. It is just a phenomenal infantry map.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely one of the best ones. Then Road Rage from Battlefield 2, one of the best vehicle maps. Outbreak from BF4, Propaganda. I think Nivelle Nights is
Outbreak
my favorite.
was that the big mountain map?
Big mountain map. It is the community jungle map. It's the community
Oh,
operations map.
yes. Okay, yes. Okay.
Yeah, that was a really, really good map.
What's the other is it Guilin Peaks?
Yes, that was the one with the big three mountains. That was another good infantry map.
That was another good infantry map that I enjoyed. Maybe not like one of the best ever, but I enjoyed that
Right.
map.
So that one was it's one of those weird things because it's probably one of the best infantry maps to be a 4, but it's divisive because it's got some weird flag areas that just don't have any cover. So people are like, I
Yeah.
don't know where to go. I always get shot at. Well, it's got problems, but it's still one of the better ones, I think.
One of my favorite infantry maps ever is still to this day the team deathmatch layout of No Shark Canals in Battlefield 3. Absolutely goated, even with its problems. You have the upper area, basically like a 100-meter head glitch. But then the crates, the way they're set up in the middle. I remember just having so much fun playing that map just for hours, hundreds of hours on my dad's laptop when I first started playing Battlefield. That is where I cut my teeth learning
Okay.
Battlefield infantry, holding angles, how to rotate. That was such a fun map
I'm
for me.
actually really glad you brought No Shard up, TDM,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to ask you this, and I'm sure your chat can respond to this too.
Yep. So chat, listen up.
So No Shark Canals, everybody loved TDM on No Shark Canals, right? They remake that layout on Dragon Valley in TDM on BF4, and like nobody plays it. Then they
Yeah,
remake
I remember
No
they
Shark
did that.
Canals in Portal for 2042, and like nobody plays TDM. So what is what do you think is the reason for that? Was the BF3 version just fire in a bottle, or just, or do you think that kind of that legacy kind of wore off quick?
Well, Sarni's saying in chat they made it double the size and be a 4 for some
They
reason.
did. They increased it at least slightly. I don't think.
So
I think it was not 1-to-1, sure, but it
yeah,
was still mostly the same layout.
I also just think it might have been BF3's thing. Now with Portal, I think it's a different situation. I think I don't want to go off on too big of a tangent here. I think Portal's an
Right.
absolute catastrophe, and I think the Battlefield community simply had too much at their disposal, and they just didn't make No Shark Canal 24/7 TDM. They made 1000% damage El Alamein, whatever you want to call it, instead, and bought XP farms. And you
I
know,
very much agree with your takes on Portal for BF
oh my
2042.
god.
So I don't think I have too much to add to that. I think what somebody said was one was a base game app and the other was DLC. I think that does have a massive effect on that
Yes,
too.
I was about to
Yeah,
say that too. Yeah,
yeah, but
but
it's still
I just
interesting. You
think it
still
might have
don't
been
see PVM servers. Yeah,
it just might have been a BF3 thing. You know, like
yeah.
people played Operation Metro. That was sort of a BF3 thing. It was a BF4 thing too, alongside lockers. But some certain games just spawn certain favorite things, and I think there are multiple reasons why it might not have caught on later. But yeah,
But to your point, I don't think that nostalgia is necessarily a reason to remaster a map.
no,
Same thing
I
with like
agree.
Metro or Locker. I think like having the experience in the past, especially for like a linear meat grinder map, like Metro is It's not my cup of tea, but I understand why people like it. I mean, there's a ton of linear meat grinders in the series, right? I've been playing them since 1942. Berlin was a meat grinder. Um, it's that I think those are easier to replicate on a gameplay and structural wise without with creating an entirely new design. So you have something very fresh each time. I don't think you need to remaster Metro even as so I don't think and I don't think people that call for it necessarily need it or want it either. I think they just want to relive those glory days.
Yeah. And BF5 proved, I'm not sure what your opinion is on Operation Underground, but Operation Underground, completely new map. Basically Metro, basically, I won't say lockers, but basically Metro. Different style of Metro, obviously completely different map design with the heightened center C flag area with the overlooking things and the railroad running through the whole thing. Serve the same purpose though.
Yes. Underground was an interesting thing. I actually rated that a little bit lower than the BF3 Metro. You know, those underground catacombs and tunnel systems that they had underneath were fantastic. And I thought though that was so much better than what Metro did, because Metro didn't have that.
Yeah, Metro didn't have that.
At the same time, it still ended up funneling you back into like 2 or 3 lanes, and then you still had that meat grinder effect, and you just that was so frustrating. Like all you needed was a path outside, and it would have solved the whole problem. Which is again also another reason why I think Redacted might be among the best linear meat grinder maps, because it has that lane, so many lanes to get around, and ones that's very isolated.
I think Redacted is Redacted might be better than Metro.
Yes.
And it's better than Operation Underground. Whether or not it's better than Lockers, I don't know.
I mean, this is going to come down to your subjectivity here for sure. I think that the problem with any linear meat grinder map that scale, you're going to run into hallway choke point bottleneck problems. You're going to run into spawn point problems because there's never enough room for people to spawn. And you're going to run into base deployment choke point, or, like full cap problems. And all of them are going to have it. I think Redacted might do the best at trying to address those so far, though.
Yeah. Redacted is, I mean, my stream knows this. Redacted is pretty much definitely my favorite map in 2042, not just because it's a meat grinder, but in my mind, it's probably the most playable map in the game, aside from maybe Spearhead. And that is
one of the most texturally detailed too, which is really nice. It's very unique compared to like every other map in the game.
So talking about maps, we can kind of go into this now. This is going to be an interesting topic for maybe some people on my YouTube channel that aren't aware that this is actually a thing. We mentioned it at the beginning, and some of you might have caught it. We mentioned Battlefield Competitive. Gravity mentioned that he's played Battlefield Competitive from the start of the series all the way until Battlefield 4. He's casted Battlefield tournaments. I've won Battlefield tournaments, played in them, casted some BF4 stuff myself. I'm going to talk about Battlefield Competitive now, whether or not it can actually work. And I want to address one thing before we get into this. The larger Battlefield community, whenever they hear Battlefield Competitive, they immediately scoff. Immediately. And what I don't like is how hypocritical they are. A lot of people in the Battlefield community are about this, because on one hand, they say Battlefield's a sandbox, you can do whatever you want, but as soon as you mention competitive, they immediately try to shut it down. But they want to do what they want to do, right? So anyone with that opinion, get a fucking grip off the bat, all right? Now we're going to talk about the potential viability or unviability of competitive in a Battlefield game, whether or not it can actually work, what type of mode they would have to make, and I guess you can take it away wherever you want to start it.
Oh boy. So where do you start? Okay. So just on that, how people perceive that topic of competitive Battlefield, I think part of the reason that I think there's 2 reasons why they might have that opinion. First off is they don't know it exists, or it existed.
Absolutely.
That is the problem. Existed. The competitive Battlefield scene used to be massive. There were hundreds of competitive teams playing in multiple leagues around the world, around the Battlefield 2, 3, 4 era. And then it just kind of took a nosedive because certain features and subsequent titles just weren't there anymore. You started taking away the ability to host private servers, custom servers, took away spectator mode. took away anything like team swap options. Just everything started to go downhill as far as what um, the capability of what the players could do was. And then there was another issue, like maps became too large. You couldn't have 8 versus 8 on a 32 Conquest small size map because
Yeah.
like in the old days you either had mod support and you can mod the maps to be a smaller size, or the refractor engines BF2 and 2142 launched with 16 player size maps, which was awesome. Like that was perfect for competitive modes. Um, Battlefield 2 was probably the first game that DICE actually supported the competitive community. There was a Battlefield 2 World Tournament that they sponsored and like offered a $50,000 grand prize for.
Oh,
My team competed in that and we made it to the playoffs.
I dream of that.
It, see, yeah, and then let's see. Then not long after that, there was the Championship Gaming Invitational, and that was one of the only times that Battlefield 2 or Battlefield series in general was ever put on a TV channel on an esports like thing, and they had the 4 of the
Awesome.
top teams, and that was a $20,000 grand prize. Yeah, Battlefield esports used to be enormous, and then they kind of just walked away from it.
The tools weren't there anymore. And I can kind of speak to that from a personal perspective. So, longtime viewers, and maybe you're in the chat right now, will remember this. BF5 came around, and my team wanted to compete in some Squad Conquest tournaments going on. And Squad Conquest was a smaller, more infantry-based 3-point game mode. And that's perfect for competition when it comes to Battlefield. Now, the tools were not there to set up these tournaments at the time. Squad Conquest, the way I remember it, during when this tournament was scheduled, it was a limited time game mode. We could not set up private servers. So what we had to do was, we had to seed a server with all the people that were going to try to play in this tournament or in this scrim. So what we had to do is we had to load all these people in the server, then wait for everyone to get in without a random player joining. And it took a full hour for this person to leave this server so that we could actually start playing the games. And when somebody crashed and another random person loaded in, you can imagine what kind of absolute chaos ensued after that. More waiting, more typing in the chat, can you please leave? We're trying to do this thing. And they would go, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what? I'm trying to play Squad Conquest. So that speaks exactly to what Gravity was saying. As time went on, the tools to actually set up any sort of events, any sort of community, anything, slowly just went away until there was almost nothing left.
And I'm just thinking of, there used to be a lot of, and it's not like the will to compete wasn't there. There were a lot of council BF5 leagues that would do the same thing. They would just join random servers and like try to backfill a server, an empty server, and do the same thing and have their match. Oh man, that was bad until you got to. Then the community servers came like a year and almost 2 years later after launch, right before the game just finally ended support. Right. Yeah, that was way too late. So that's one of those things, like if you're going to do any kind of competitive community thing, like you need to have, some sort of server hosting on launch. Who knows what the next game is going to be, but at least 2040. See, that's the thing. 2042, you can do it. You have Portal, right?
Yeah.
You can host your own thing, but then you have a lack of other tools. You can't restart the round without restarting the server.
Spectator.
You can't change the map. You don't have spectator, which is huge. You can't switch teams, so actually getting teams into a map is just like herding cats.
I competed in early 2042 as well, and let me tell you right now, like he said, there isn't a lack of will to compete. When I tell you, if anyone that was playing early Battlefield 2042 competitive, we're talking less than 2 months after the game released, every one of those players loves the Battlefield franchise. If they were putting up with the bullshit we were putting up with the amount of problems and the bugs and the horrible map design, trying to form strats around these maps, just trying to make it work just for the love of the game. Believe me when I say that.
And it's a winning, having a competitive, environment for your game is just kind of a winning strategy across the board. From a public player perspective, from your casuals, you have your top players are going to be more interested in finding scrims and playing matches and not farming a public server as often, right? So you maybe avoid them a little bit less. You're going to watch their competitive games from their perspective and go, holy crap, look what that player just did. Maybe, maybe they're not cheating, that raises the skill level consciousness, consensus of what, people think is possible and know, and have an aspiration to play better. And then from like a developer POV, it's like, this is free marketing, for having, you can push this game, you can let people self-market it all they want, and it keeps your game alive going longer and sells copies.
I know from personal experience streaming tournaments, the first 2042 tournament that I streamed, which was held by iBuyPower, I want to say I had 1,000 viewers. On my personal channel, 1,000 viewers for a Battlefield 2042 tournament. And I'm proud to say I'm pretty much one of the only individual players that can actually pull an audience for Battlefield competitive like that. And I've always really wanted to push that to my larger audience, both on YouTube and on Twitch. I've always really enjoyed doing that. But I think you opened another can of worms, which we might talk on a little bit later. But I think in order to actually legitimize any sort of competitive play, it obviously has to be official from DICE and from Battlefield. So they have to make an official mode. And this thing might be controversial, but in order for any sort of outside attention to take it seriously, you cannot do these larger game mode competitives. You can't.
Yep.
You cannot do 8v8. You cannot do 12v12. You cannot do 32v32.
Don't agree with that.
You have to do 5v5. You have to. It's just one of those things where if there's any sort of attention outside, none of these orgs are going to field a team where they have to find 32 people to play or 16 people to play. It's just not going to happen.
Oh, okay. No, I like this. I like this chat here. Okay, so yes, I think that they might need to have an official competitive game mode. I don't think it needs to be the one. They could probably tinker around with a couple to see what flows best. But one thing that, to your point, is correct is they do need to be involved, heavily involved.
Yes.
They need to push the right features, and then they need to push the support, like on their front page in game. They need to be any leagues that are taking place, any matches, any streams. Those need to be front and center and get people involved.
And before you go a little too far, I just want to say, my end goal for Battlefield competitive is this. So let's say they're involved in it. If they're involved in it, they need to take it extremely seriously and actually build it to a point where it makes sense for outside interest. If they're not taking it seriously, the tools need to be there for the community to do whatever they want. And then if they're not taking it seriously, Battlefield, the community can do their 8v8s. The community can do their 32v32s. But it's not serious. It will not be taken seriously, and it will not succeed at a larger scale, is my point. I think
the best is going to be simultaneous. It's going to be, ground up and top down. It has to be.
Yeah, yes.
But 32v32 comp modes are fun, but those are not really what we're referring to when we say competitive.
Of course, and this is always the confusion.
Yeah.
Because when I play these games and they go, "Oh, you're playing Battlefield competitive," like I didn't even know that happened. Where are the vehicles? People always think, well, if it's Battlefield, it has to be big. They think Battlefield competitive has to have an element of Battlefield to make it unique, rather than just making it another 5v5, rather than just making it, I don't know, like a more sweaty version of Rush or something like that. And they don't realize these outside things that I mentioned. Like, if you're taking competitive seriously from a top-down view, like EA is actively involved, they want to field tournaments, they're putting up prize pools, right? They're not going to do that for these huge game modes. Because in order to get a bunch of teams interested, you have to streamline the experience and make it similar enough to other competitive experiences on the market, which means, ultimately, the player count of the competitive mode has to be low. 4v4, 5v5. And that's basically it. Those are your options there.
I don't necessarily agree with. I don't disagree, but I don't fully agree with that, and I'll say why. So to get your casual interest in it and grow it from the ground up, it does need to be a smaller game mode, 5v5 probably. Especially if you're going to do something like a ranked mode in game, something that actually you can allow SPMM. The problem with that is it doesn't stand out on its own for Battlefield. It is, at the end of the day, just an infantry experience. And if you have a one life game mode, why wouldn't people instead go choose to watch Counter-Strike or COD? It needs to set itself apart. Now, you were 100% right that if you really wanted to do 8v8 or something, that is so much harder to sponsor and play because you actually need to pay for 8 people to fly somewhere, right? It's just it's such a pain.
The
right?
logistics of it are just impossible.
The logistics are so much more expensive. But at the same time, that I think AV8 classically is the dominant and most unique standardized Battlefield competitive environment because it's not just infantry. You allow for that sandbox experience and that dynamic gameplay and that chaos that can happen like on screen at any moment. Like you've watched like Heeb's team in BF4 play. Like the team gets full capped and then somebody shoots a Zook or something or at a attack helicopter that's been camping their main across the map, or Kalzagi hits a tank shell across the map. Like those are, you can build a casting narrative around those players and those teams in a way that you can't do in 5v5, because in 5v5 you the viewer gets as bored as the caster does. Like, oh yeah, you watching, from a gameplay experience from a player's perspective, you're going crazy full adrenaline. Like you are at the top of your game. But from a viewer perspective, watching somebody get 1 kill at a time or 2 kills, or
they don't understand the larger importance.
But the repetitive aspect of it is what wears it down. Whereas an 8v8, you have a little bit of a break, and then you can also kind of build upon the whole map and the experience. I think AV8 is the way to go competitively, but I think that needs to be from the ground up.
Yeah, and Armadon in my chat has a very good point that I 100% agree with. He says, because competitive is so different from the core pub experience in Battlefield, it will never be big. He's 100% right. Which is why I think ultimately we just need to have the community tools available for the community to make competitive, and then that will just be the existence of Battlefield competitive. Ideally, in a perfect world, it would be EA support and there's big prize pools and oh my god, there's thousands of viewers and all this cool stuff, like a lot of other competitive scenes. But I'm not delusional. I'm ready to accept like that. This is never going to happen. Can we at least have the tools to play what we would like to play, right? Because ultimately, whenever you have any game release, whether it be super casual or inherently super sweaty, you're going to have people that are going to want to compete with it. And that rings true with Battlefield ever since the inception of the franchise.
And that's been a distinguishing, a major distinction between the Call of Duty franchise and Battlefield is they have leaned into their competitive element hard, and they have built an incredibly successful brand for a competitive esports scene, whereas Battlefield didn't. And that's why you get this, Battlefield's not competitive element. Well, it sure as hell can be. And it has been. It's out there, and people want to do it.
People don't know how insane some of these players are. They have no clue.
And the amount of time you go building strategies and different, role. 8v8 is so much fun because, as a team, you have to scout a tanker. Like you have to look for a person that not only is really good in the vehicle, but knows how to play as a team, and then maybe is good on infantry. And so you have to swap these things around. I think you can absolutely do both. I think there's an element where if DICE were to provide the right features, they could probably start with some sort of 5v5 competitive thing that they run, and let the lower, online leagues that are DICE supported or DICE sponsored run alongside it as well. And then maybe just cut down on costs and collaborate. You know, if you are going to have a live event for 5v5, then just fly out the top 2 teams for 8v8, and then, you know, so it just cuts down the cost, and you can have a grand finale that's for both leagues. That's one way of doing it. But either way, at the end of the day, it comes down to developer support and having the right features and tool sets. And that is something that we haven't had
in,
completely in a long
in
time.
a long time. Yeah,
I'll say one more thing here, that since we haven't had it in a long time, it would not surprise me to see some element of that this time around, just because it seems like they're hiring certain people that are very community and creator based. That maybe they want to try to compete with other franchises this time around. They want to go big. Like, obviously they know that this is make or break. Maybe this time around they'll actually try to go for it, but will we see the features? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, hope for the best in this aspect. I don't really know. We'll see what happens. I never really even know what they're gonna do with this sort of stuff. You know, in BF5, the game had almost nothing tool-wise at the start. Then they added it later. 2042, you know, Portal, we got it, and then there wasn't a spectator. There always seems to be one or two things that are essential missing, and it just provides extremely unique limitations that you somehow have to work around in order to just get like this unique experience that so many you know, competitive players actually do want to play in to actually work.
Spectator mode is just a kind of a bonkers one on its own, because it's like, it's not just the competitive community asking for it. This is like all of your creators who want to do screenshots and media and machinima and
Oh my god,
video reviews, and like, it's everything.
one of my
right?
most
So
popular
like,
series on my channel is is Agent Enders, where we go in the fucking wild and we look at these people that go 0 and 22, and we find out what they do. You know, like, how are you going 0 and 22? How are you doing this? And we find out, you just find such unique, you know, experiences because you follow these players that are just alien to so many people. It's just like people don't even realize there's a guy that'll spawn in only on a certain map, and he'll only go to a certain area, and that's all he plays. And you check his account, and sure enough, he only plays, you know, Iwo Jima Conquest, and he snipes on the hill. There are players like that, and it's fucking funny to use spectator mode and actually document that.
yeah, it's there are some interesting people who play Battlefield. I don't think that's unique to the series, but I think that's just funny to keep an eye on them for sure.
It absolutely is. So I suppose we'll end this off by with a question. Do you think BF6 will have a server browser?
So obviously I made that one massive video last year about the server browser.
Yeah.
That one got a lot of traction. I think I always hope this is one of those instances where I'm hoping against hope here, because the trend is clearly not in that direction. It seems that has been, the server browser itself has been stripped away, game after game after game, starting with BF1.
Yeah.
This insistence on quick play and matchmaking. It would be a huge surprise to see a server browser again, much to the disappointment of many people. See, it's weird because I think from a developer perspective, I think that they're just trying to go with what their competitors are doing and what the modern gaming market is doing. Of like, well, we'll just get people in the game as fast as possible. Nobody wants to be sitting on the main menu. It's kind of ironic because half the time in 2042 you're sitting on the main menu searching for a map, right?
I swear to God, 15 minutes. So I typically stream for about 2 or 3 hours. Typically about more around 2, because the game's just so hard to play even now. Just deal with. I would say in chat, if you have any predictions on this, type them. I would say out of the 2 hours I spend playing the game, 15 to 20 minutes is searching for the game, which is crazy.
Then you hit the same map 5 times in a row.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to play. And here's the thing is, like, even if they fixed that, that would still be not it would still wouldn't be enough. It would still drive me crazy. You need at the very minimum to have, if I'm going to quick play into a game, that lobby needs to be persistent. I just need to load into the next map in a rotation.
Oh
I
my
don't want
God.
to see the main menu up for the next
Don't
5
even.
hours.
One of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life, Gravity. Game of 2042 ends. Full server. Kicks everyone out to the main menu to matchmake again. Why?
Yeah.
Why? What
It's-
what are we doing? Like what?
It's such a regression in logic and just set player satisfaction. And this doesn't even, like, ignoring, if their argument was the server browser is data technology, fine, but the technology has a proven impact and it works. It's not like there's people that are not using it or not going to use it, and the communities are built off of it. And that's part of the reason why communities in Battlefield have just completely fractured and fallen apart over the last 3 or 4 titles, is because they don't have anything to build upon anymore.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Community can't host their server anymore.
It's so sad because I remember playing, BF3, BF4, BF1, even through BF5. BF5 really is the last sort of... I saw the last few remnants of what could be called a community, where you would see people running around with their squads with clan tags, and later in the game's life cycle, you would see AOD hosting servers. But back then, in BF3 and 4, so many different clans, so many different communities, bunch of different platoons you could join, all sorts of stuff going on, and that is just absolutely gone now.
Yeah, the worst part about it is it's not just matchmaking. It's you're getting rid of a whole social element to the gameplay,
Which is huge.
Yeah, you're okay. Even if you're playing on an EA official server and you're in there for like 5 hours, and that lobby remains the same, you're still playing with the same people that you played for the last 5 hours. And then if you join that same server again the next night, there might be the same people, and then you like socially connect to them. You start to remember people. You know you let your you become more personable with them, and then you just say somebody will invite you to a Discord, and boom, you've got a community, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how you get people playing long term, and it just blows my mind that apparently is not a worthwhile gain for them anymore.
One of
I
the
don't
most
understand it.
unacceptable and nonsensical things that is not in the game. The fact that they aren't putting it in the game. Platoons. What is why would it not be worth it for them to put platoons in the game?
Yeah, it's a weird one too.
Why?
Yeah.
Just do it. It adds so much community value.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do.
It just seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, one of those things of people want to be together. And it's not like you can't do unique things with it. You can track stats together or do something where, you have a competitive platoon leaderboard where, you're tracking kills against another platoon or something. There's so many things you could uniquely do with platoons nowadays that I don't know why they don't. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, one of the lines I used in that video was like, how do you even know communities exist if you can't find them? Like, if nobody's wearing clan tags,
yeah,
how do you know where to look, right? How do you know who to ask? It's such a difficult thing nowadays.
I remember communities by clan tags, like TPG, AOD, right? Like all these other clans.
Yeah, I can rattle off communities from 20 years ago. It's crazy how they stick in your head, and you're just like, yeah, I was on that server like every night for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew their admins. They were more or less really good admins, and they had a good community, so you played on their server every night. That's how the game worked. Nowadays, you matchmake, and I hit the 2042 menu, and half the time I don't even make it into a game.
It's brutal sometimes, dude. Yeah. It is brutal because it's just. God, I don't want to harp too much on about the 2042 matchmaking experience. Everyone here is aware of it. Of just how bad it is. But you load into a game, you play the same things 15 times in a row. 50% of the time, the server is filled with AI, completely empty. You have to leave a game because your team is getting rolled on defense, and it's just like, okay, why am I even in the server? Let me try to find a better game that's more balanced. You get put in another AI lobby, and by that, like, what, 5-10 minutes of your time is gone, and it's like, dude, I could be playing Oblivion Remastered, you know? Just have way more fun.
That's the other thing, is like, you know, a year or two down the road when nobody's playing 2042, how are you expected to find a game? Like, if you can't you're just going to be stuck at one of those player loading screens and waiting for players that, you know, looking for a. I think the weirdest thing is I actually think Portal will become the only way people find games in 2042 down the road, because
Really?
you'll never know with matchmaking, or the regions will be dead. So
I'm
you'll
very
have to rely
bitter
on
about
Portal servers.
2042. I hope no one ever plays that game. I basically hope it just dies forever. I'm sorry. Hey, I've said it for a while on my stream. When BF6 comes out, 2042, we don't talk about that. Ever. We're done talking about it. I've made 600 videos on 2042. We don't play it. We don't talk about it. We delete it off our systems. Done.
It's gonna be the Battlefield Chernobyl. We're gonna bury it under concrete and not talk about it again.
Yes.
An unavoidable catastrophe, or unavoidable. I guess it was
majorly avoidable.
Yeah, just definitely an avoidable catastrophe. But yeah, it was. This, and it's not like the game hasn't improved over the course of the past 3 years. I'm stunned that that it's still getting support.
Oh yeah, no, that last update I was like, what? Hold on, what?
That blows my mind. The weird part is I have personally felt, I don't know if you can confirm this, how do you feel, that the game was in a really good state like late spring last year, and I feel like subsequent updates over the past year actually have felt like it made it worse and reintroduced a bunch of bugs that have made the experience, like, the game has
don't even get me started,
felt like a downgrade over the last year.
So
like,
I haven't personally noticed the game getting worse over the past year. I'm just going to be honest with you. The one thing I have noticed, and that you touched on bugs being reintroduced, there was that big sort of area about, I don't know, maybe about a month or 2 months or however long. No, maybe longer than that. Maybe about 9 months or a year, where I was talking about the recoil bug in Battlefield 2042. Baranox first sort of discovered it and found a way to really show it crystal clear. Then I made a bunch of videos detailing it. And in a patch before Season 7, they fixed it. Wasn't 100% fixed, but it was at least partially fixed. Okay? Season 7 comes along. They rebug it. And now it's rebugged forever.
Yeah, there's bugs where I'm dying, just bailing out of vehicles. When you get revived, the FOV is zoomed in. You can't zoom it out unless you rezoom and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, those are all locked in there. It's just like, guys, I feel like there's some stability issues now more than there was a year ago. Like, it was in an okay state last year. In the grand scheme of things, I think that 2042 will be looked at as an outlier. Like, it had such a weird circumstance, both as far as like the timing of everything that happened in the world, and then like all of the management decisions at DICE at the time, and the people who were in charge. It's such a weird outlier. I can't imagine anything being that in that state ever again. And I really hope that lessons have been learned from that development.
So for a long time, BF6 is guaranteed to be better than 2042. It's just a question of how much better. Because the how much better is the key part. You can have a game that's better than 2042. It's not necessarily that hard to do. It would still be a horrible game. Like BF5. BF5, I still consider that game to be pretty bad, all things considered. There's a lot of things wrong with that game. I lived that game. And 2042. It needs to be significantly better at launch than both BF5 and 2042. And I think they can do it.
The weakness.
But I don't know. We'll just have to see. BF6 is going to be very interesting. They're on, in my opinion, the right direction, right? They got all this stuff going on.
I am very optimistic about the game. I mean, everything from the labs testing, they've got the right people in charge. They've got a team that really has been, been around for a long time. I think that, and they've got apparently 4 studios working on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of optimism for it and a lot of hopes behind it. So hopefully everything works out. My biggest fear is that it gets released too early. I have a feeling they were trying to play chicken with the GTA 6 launch, and they lost.
Yeah.
I have a feeling they're gonna be like, oh yeah, they'll totally release GTA 6 in the fall, and we can have the spring launch. And that didn't work out that way. I just hope they don't launch it early.
I think EA CEO Andrew Wilson didn't stutter in that one earnings call when he said we're leaving the window open to delay the game. The CEO of EA doesn't just say that. I think that is heavily insinuating we're gonna do it. So I would be surprised at this point, given the fact we haven't even seen the reveal trailer yet. I'd be surprised to see the game released this year.
Even if it releases in the spring, I'm all for it. As long as they're dripping content, once they announce, then I'm completely fine with it.
Yeah.
Have an open beta, have closed betas, open labs to everyone. Just do something to satiate people's expectations and that desire, but also make sure that you're trending upward toward final release. Because you cannot have another BF5 or 4 or 2042 situation
BF3.
at launch. Yeah. Or 3, yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting. Launch-wise, if you look at it, BF3, pretty bad. BF4, notoriously horrible. Took about, I don't even know, maybe about a year and a half for that game to be fixed. BF1,
phenomenal.
Good. Probably the best Battlefield launch in recent memory.
Yeah, that one in Hardline had really good launches. Yeah.
BF5, again, famously bad. 2042, generationally bad, will be remembered for centuries as like one of the things that just makes the least sense ever. No words can even be said about it.
Yeah, it's again, I think there's a lot riding on it. I think they know expectations are high. It would not surprise me to see a spring launch, but if they do a fall launch, it just better be ready, because people are gonna the first impressions matter.
Oh my God!
Much.
Thank you for saying this.
That is the key thing here. Yeah,
I've been saying this for years. First impressions are more than ever right now with this fucking age of TikTok and YouTube Shorts and short attention spans. First impressions are literally the most important thing possible. Like, I can't even express how important they are. When people see how terrible 2042 was at launch, that's it. That's it. In a lot of people's eyes that are maybe more involved in the community, they're like, oh, they'll put the, give it some time, they'll pull the game back. No. You don't understand. In the eyes of the larger community, in the eyes of the potential players that this game could have had, it is over with. Done. From day fucking one. And that is why this Battlefield launch is so scary, given the history of launches with Battlefield in general. That's what they're trying to prevent with Battlefield Labs.
And of course, there's going to be something wrong with it. It's going to be on a launch date. There will be bugs, but it cannot be like critically.
No, it cannot be visually very obviously broken. With 2042, I would aim at a tank, I would aim at a helicopter, and it is lagging across the sky. And people could link that clip if they want to find it. It is, even to a casual player that has no idea about anything about Battlefield, 2042 at launch, blatantly, obviously broken. They cannot afford it.
Honestly, I think the best situation you could hope for is that on day one, people are complaining about gun balance or the balance of a feature instead of anything else.
This gun's overpowered. Okay.
Yeah, that's a huge win.
Okay, who fucking cares?
Talking gun balance, right? Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Crashing. Ooh, okay.
Nerf this attachment.
Balance, right? Yeah.
Oh no.
That's your best. That's your win-win situation.
But
Yeah,
I want to end this thing with one important point, though. Let's say BF6 releases and it's pretty good, and the game is so like immediately acceptable to the community. People aren't really complaining about catastrophic bugs or game breaking anything, right? Laggy this performance is like 60 FPS. People are complaining about, like you said, weapon balance, more nuanced things. So this weapon's overpowered, that attachment's overpowered. We can't let the past two games in BF5 and 2042 lower the standards of what is acceptable, though. And that is what I've been so frustrated with the Battlefield community.
Pongu.
Because BF6 might release, and it might be better than 2042, but maybe it isn't better than BF5. But from the Battlefield community's perspective, the aesthetic is better. So we're saved. But in general, the game's not quality, right? There's something wrong with it.
Aesthetics are a band-aid.
Yes, it is. BF1 players. I'm looking at you, BF1 players.
That's a great example. Yeah. Especially when it's map design. I think that's one thing we didn't touch on, but there is a huge argument to be made that people like map designs purely based on their aesthetics rather than their structure or their map
Or
detail
the way they play.
or the playout. Yeah, the gameplay for sure.
All
'Cause
right.
there are some horrendously bad maps that look pretty in BF1.
Galicia's pretty.
Verdun Heights is the one that always gets me. Like
no.
that map is horrendous.
That map is not good.
But it's so popular. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. If you want to leave us off with a closing remark, and we'll wrap this up.
You can follow my YouTube channel at youtube.com/gravitybftv. I've been moving lately, so I haven't had many videos. I actually meant to have a giant BF2 review out for its 20th anniversary. I missed that window. But hopefully 2 map videos out in July. So that's it.
Yeah, be sure to check out Gravity's channels. They'll be linked in the description. If you want to see more of these podcasts, let me know who I should have on next. I've seen a lot of your suggestions, and perhaps some people you've suggested are coming on. I can't confirm or deny this at this moment in time. If you enjoy the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and check out Gravity's stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one.